Okay, picture this. It's June 1942. The entire Pacific War, it's literally hanging by a thread. Everything is about to come down to one single massive battle. You've got this seemingly unstoppable Japanese force on one side and American ingenuity on the other. This is the incredible story of the Battle of Midway. So for Japan's Admiral Yamamoto, you might remember him as the architect of Pearl Harbor, the clock was absolutely ticking. He knew America's industrial power was like a sleeping giant. His only real shot was to land a decisive knockout blow, to cripple the U.S. Navy before it could truly wake up and get going. And to land that blow, Yamamoto came up with a really ambitious plan. And just like with Pearl Harbor, the whole thing hinged on one critical element: total and complete surprise. The plan itself was methodical and pretty deadly. Phase 1, his bombers would just soften up Midway's defenses. Easy enough. Phase 2, an invasion force of 5,000 troops would storm the island. But it's that final phase that was the crushing blow. As the U.S. Navy came rushing from Pearl Harbor to help, Yamamoto's main fleet would spring a massive trap and just annihilate them. The tip of this spear was Vice Admiral Nagumo's first carrier striking force, and yeah, this is the very same fleet that had hit Pearl Harbor. We're talking 4 of the world's most powerful aircraft carriers: the Akagi, the Kaga, the Hiryu, and the Soryu. A truly terrifying force. So as this massive Japanese fleet sailed out, thinking they were heading for a guaranteed surprise victory, the Americans were busy preparing a little surprise of their own. See, they had a secret weapon that Yamamoto knew absolutely nothing about. And this weapon, it wasn't a new ship, it wasn't some faster plane. No, it was being forged right here, in a quiet, windowless basement, a world away from the roar of engines and the crash of waves. This was a war of intellect, a war of information. And this was America's edge. A guy named Commander Joseph Rochefort and his intelligence team had done the impossible. They had cracked JN-25, the top secret Japanese naval code. All of a sudden, they knew pretty much everything. The target, the timing, the ships involved, the big surprise attack. Yeah, it wasn't a surprise anymore. Now, armed with this incredible intelligence, Admiral Chester Nimitz, the commander of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, didn't just prepare a defense, he prepared an ambush. He gathered his 3 available carriers, the Yorktown, the Enterprise, and the Hornet, and he sent them out to lie in wait. So the stage was set. It was this high-stakes game of poker, where one side thought it held all the cards, while the other was just quietly waiting for the perfect moment to reveal its winning hand. Japan made the first move. Yamamoto sent a smaller force way up north to attack the Aleutian Islands off of Alaska. The whole point was to lure the American fleet away from Midway. But Nimitz, he knew the real target, right? He didn't fall for the feint. He kept his carriers exactly where they needed to be. I mean, the contrast between the two strategies was just stark. You had Yamamoto's really complex plan of deception, and it was being countered by Nimitz's simple, direct ambush. Nimitz was literally turning Japan's own favorite strategy, surprise, right back against them. But here's where things get really critical. Right before the battle, Yamamoto actually gets some intelligence that American carriers might be in the area. And what does he choose to do? He chooses to maintain radio silence to avoid giving away his own fleet's position. He never warned Admiral Nagumo. This one single decision meant his frontline commander was sailing completely blind, straight into a trap. Okay, so this brings us to the morning of June 4th. The Japanese attack on Midway starts just as they planned. But the battle, and really the whole war, is about to hinge on a series of fateful decisions, all made in just a few crucial minutes. So after that first air attack on Midway, Nagumo gets a report saying another strike is needed. But then, at almost the same time, American torpedo bombers from Midway start attacking his ships. He was caught in this terrible dilemma. Should he rearm his planes with bombs for another land attack, or with torpedoes for a naval battle that he didn't even know was coming? And at that very moment, high above the ocean, an American dive bomber leader named Wade McCluskey was facing his own impossible choice. He'd reached the exact spot where the Japanese carriers were supposed to be. But there was nothing there. His fuel was critically low. Does he turn his squadron back to the Enterprise, or does he gamble everything on one last search? McCluskey trusted his gut. He figured the Japanese fleet must have changed course, so he led his bombers northwest. And Admiral Nimitz would later say that this was one of the most important decisions of the entire battle. McCluskey was now flying directly toward his unsuspecting targets.
And you won't believe how fast this all went down. At 10:22 a.m., McCluskey's planes dive on the Kaga, leaving it a total wreck. 2 minutes later, bombers from the Yorktown hit the Soryu. And just 2 minutes after that, at 10:26, Nagumo's own flagship, the Akagi, is struck. Its deck was packed with fueled and armed planes, and it just exploded into what one sailor called a burning hell. 3 carriers, gone in 5 minutes.
In those 5 minutes, the entire strategic balance of the Pacific War was just shattered. Japan's offensive power was crippled, and the tide was about to turn for good. But the fight wasn't quite over. Japan's last remaining carrier, the Hiryu, launched a fierce counterattack. Its planes managed to find and cripple the USS Yorktown. But it was really a final, desperate act. In retaliation, American bombers found the Hiryu and dealt the fatal blow, sinking the 4th and final Japanese carrier of the day. The final tally was just devastatingly lopsided. Japan lost all 4 of its frontline carriers, the absolute heart of its navy. The U.S. lost just one, the heroic but ultimately doomed Yorktown. And the cost went way beyond the carriers. Japan lost 2,500 experienced sailors and pilots. These were men who were simply irreplaceable. And while American losses were definitely heavy, Japan's were catastrophic. They lost the core of their naval aviation in a single afternoon. So when you look back, Midway was the turning point. Japan's grand offensive in the Pacific was stopped dead in its tracks. For the U.S., it was a massive morale boost. It was proof that the Japanese could be beaten. It was just a stunning triumph of intelligence, of foresight, and of pure battlefield courage. And it really leaves you with a fascinating question to think about. This entire battle was won on such thin margins. A gut decision by a pilot, a deciphered code. What if Yamamoto had decided to break radio silence and warn Nagamo? How different would our history books look today?